Now I mentioned that there are a number of different size dominoes. They come in, like this one here is a 6mm domino. That means it's 6 millimeters thick, as well as the standard domino size. And then there are some 8s, and then there are some 10s over here. Yeah, I know, it looks like a cooking show. We're going to make a souffle a little later. Then there are some 5mm ones. These were very useful for doing, say, panel alignment, but what Festool found is that a lot of people wanted them to be even smaller and get you into some smaller areas. So they came up with these 4mm ones, which look more like a chiclet. Now, the bit for that is a little bit different. Each one of these sizes, the 4, 5, 6, 8, and 10, have a different bit because it's sized to the size of the Mortis. Now, this is a pack that you get when you get the Domino assortment pack, and you can of course buy these individually. When you buy them individually, you get them in one of these nice little show boxes, which is good. The bits themselves seem to last forever. I did a stair job where I used the 10mm plunge bit, and I ended up hitting a number of little staples and stuff like that along the way that I didn't catch. So I thought my bit was fried, and I've been using it for 2 years now, ever since, and it still keeps on going. So they're very durable bits. They're a little on the more expensive side because there's more to one of these bits, but they're definitely quality bits. And I'd actually recommend that you get the Domino Assortment Systainer. It comes like in a big box. The newer ones will probably be in a T-lock soon, but then he's got it all divided out. Now mine is the older one that predates the 4mm dominoes, but the new assortment will include some 4mm dominoes if I remember correctly. And it also comes with this little pack of bits. So when you're looking at the price, you might think that it's more expensive than buying the dominoes separately, but actually no. When you consider that you need all these bits anyway, it's much better to have. This is getting low, as you can see, and this was already my second refill. And I've purchased several bags along the way, so you go through them, and it's nice to have them all around. And you can also buy them in these like retail bubble packs, so they're kind of nice that you can get a pretty good lot of them if you're ever stuck by just going to the local store. Now, I talked about how the bits are different size, so you need to change them out. In the way that Festool always does it with their routers, they use a ratchet lock on here. So what it is, if we take a look at this bit, right, it's got, of course, the little cutting head on it. Now, this one here is the 5mm diameter bit, and those are all written right on the bit, if you can see that. The end of it is threaded, which is a little unusual for a router bit. So the way that you take it off, there's a little ratchet lock button. You're going to hang on to it here. There's some flat surfaces on the side of the bit. Just put the wrench there and then pop that thing off. Just unscrew it the whole way. And then you have to put it in your mouth here. We're going to do this, and then you put that one on, and you screw that thing back on. And I can't do this while I got this thing in my mouth, so there you go. But more seriously, when you put it on, I mean, once you get it bottom, all you do is give it a little bit of a snug. You don't need to go and crank down on this thing. So, and also you don't want to. With a smaller bit like this, you might actually bend that threaded rod, and certainly you can do maybe some damage to down here. I mean, it's very durable. It's built like a tank, like most Festools, but go easy on that. Now, I talked before about this Mortis width knob. Now, currently this Mortis width is set to the exact width of a domino. This one here is actually sets it to making the hole 3mm wider, and this last one here adds 6mm to the width of the hole. Now, why would you want to make those mortises bigger? One of the reasons would be if you're doing a complicated glue up and you wanted to be able to align two pieces. Now, say I needed to get these two dominoed together, and I wanted to, if I made the hole a little bit wider on this side here, it'd be really easy for me to insert the domino and slide this over until I make it flush, and then I'm done. It's not bad if you're doing certain type of work where you want that speed and you don't want to worry about that being exact. There could also be times where, say there are a number of dominoes. If you're connecting two different pieces of wood here together, if you had, pretend these are bigger panels, if you're going to put a number of dominoes in here and then a number in this one here, and you want to connect these two surfaces together for registration, if you're doing a panel glue up, those dominoes aren't really adding any strength, right? They're only there for alignment. So there, what you might want to do is put an exact width domino here, and then make a couple wider ones here, just so that you don't have to have those dead exact. If one of them is just a hair off, you're not going to be able to slam these two down when you have, say, a row of 8 or 9 domino holes to line up. So that's what the width setting is for. Now, it is tempting to do things where you're going to make it so you can adjust it and get the flushness. So what I did here is I created a cutout. I put a number of mortises and dominoes in this piece here. This is a 6mm domino, and then I plowed the holes so that you can see that these here, the ones that are on the bottom piece of wood, these are all made to be exact size domino holes. This was another exact size hole on the topmost piece of wood. This is an exact size, the +3, and then the +6. So you could see how this would give you a lot of leeway for aligning that other piece, and if there's any little mistake, it's going to eat up that mistake for you. Now on this side here, what I did is this is exact and exact, +3, +3, and then +6 and +6. Now you can see all the room that you have. This one here, the domino looks like it's lost in there. And that actually is something to take into consideration, and I have a demo that I'll show you about how this affects the strength of the joint. Now, if you're doing a panel glue up, it's not a big deal, right? The panel's long grain to long grain glue joint is the strength. It's not the little domino. But it is a factor if you're doing something like this on a rail and style where they're coming in at a 90-degree angle. So you can keep this in mind. It gives you a good reference for how they look. Also, you can see that I dropped the dominoes all the way into the bottom here on this side, but this side here shows a little bit of room. The mortise holes are actually going to be a little bit deeper than is necessary for the domino. And what that's for is that's for glue relief. You want to have some room for the excess glue to go. You want some, you don't want it to be absolutely dead on in case there's any fluctuation in the length of the domino. So that's what you've got that there for. And we'll go over what the dominoes look like in a moment. Now, if we were to take a look at a domino up close, I mean, it's got a little embossment of Festool right on there, and then on the other side it's got the size, which is really handy because sometimes you can't tell the difference between the 8 and the 10 when they're just sitting on the bench. And you panic when you put the 8 and the 10 hole and you're like wondering why it's so loose. But there's actually a little bit of a pattern here on it that actually acts as a glue relief. So as you're sliding this thing in, those little holes are going to capture some glue and hold it and carry it down. If it was dead smooth and you'd be pushing it in, it's like a wiper, and it's just going to wipe all the glue off and you're not going to get anything on the inside. So that's very useful to have on there, besides looking kind of sporty. Then the edges of this, if you can see, it looks like there's little ridges here. And what those ridges are for is also, that's for giving you some hydraulic relief when you're inserting this, that the glue can then come up and has an escape hatch. Now, one thing I'll say is sometimes these dominoes get a little on the tight side, just from humidity variances in your garage, and you'd wonder, with me being in Arizona, how I would know that. So what I sometimes end up having to do, and this is just a tip or pointer, is that this top ridge is really, really weak. And typically, it's the one that's going to be limiting. As this piece plumps up from humidity, it's this little ridge here that's going to be the deciding factor whether it's going to fit or not. So a lot of times I just take a little chisel, and it's very, very easy to give it a trim. You shouldn't have to do this all the time, but if you need to, know that you can do that very, very quickly. In fact, I might have even done it during an assembly. Now the dominoes come in different lengths. So these two dominoes here are both 8mm dominoes, but they're different lengths. This one here is a 50mm length, and this one here being a 40mm length. So if you're doing a rail and style piece and the rails and styles are on the narrow side, you might end up needing to only use this because you're going to want, you don't want it to poke out the other end. That'd look a little ridiculous. And this one here could be used in more robust settings, so you get a little bit more glue surface. Now if you're doing something where you are taking two pieces of wood and you're joining them at a 90-degree angle, I mean, you want as much surface area as you can on that tenon because you're not getting any strength from this long grain to end grain glue joint. So you actually want it to go in further, so these longer ones are very, very useful for that. The depth setting that's on the side of the domino comes in a number of multiples that work out very, very well for these dominoes. These dominoes tend to be 30mm long, 40, and 50. So of course you're going to have the 15, 20, and 25mm depths, and that's what you see here in the middle. Now there is also a 12, and then there's also a 28. Those are useful if you want to, nobody says that you have to put this in halfway into one piece and halfway into the other piece. There's many times where I'll do something that's more of an offset, especially if I want to use these longer 50s. I might put more of it into one portion and then less into the other portion just so that I have the stronger piece of wood in there. So just bear in mind that you can make some adjustments there for offsetting.